That's where experience comes from. You want to work with someone in business, or you're investing in someone. Give me someone who's had a failure.
Don't go to a butcher to ask him to build a house for you.
But the responsibility is not blame. It's not the same thing. Responsibility is empowerment. If I am the problem, I am the solution.
You did this for a reason. You go against it, it's your fault.
So this money game is not really about money. It's never been about money. It's been about those things that we become in the process. Because the money we make, we're going to spend. Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Ellie Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more. More from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. You ever seen that quote that hell is like what hell is going to a place where we'll see our potential versus our actual, and understanding the difference between the two of those. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that, but yikes. Sounds like hell for sure.
Right. It sounds like hell for sure. Similar to what you shared in the last experience, like remember who you are.
Right.
Like remember, because you're going to be reminded at
yeah,
some
and even
point.
that word potential, like I've been someone that's always been, for whatever reason, always been certain and clear of my potential. Execution is necessary,
Right.
but knowing, I don't know if everyone, but I've always understood and was clear, my potential.
But you were probably flagged at a pretty young age. Like who's down like, Ryan, you got so much potential.
Yeah, for sure. You're great. You're great. No, but I was.
But
legit.
there was also something.
There was something
also.
there. Everything I was for myself without any outside voices. I always felt inside me innately my potential is pretty big.
Right.
Then I wake up and it's other stuff starts getting in the way.
Right. There's something in that comment also that's you're noticeably far from your potential.
For sure.
Right. He has real potential, which sounds like a compliment, but it's a little bit of of a dig. But at the same point in time, it's, I guess, one of the better criticisms we can get because it left you with a certain belief, I got potential. I got potential.
Yeah, stepping into that later in life, But what's time? When's the right time?
The only time.
That's right.
What I was thinking about with denial is how often I speak to people who are resistant to the truth. And that doesn't mean that what I'm saying is necessarily the truth, meaning they're resistant to exploring whether or not it is true. I'll give you an example.
Yeah, give me an example.
What I mean.
Unpack it for me.
So I've mentioned Byron Katie before.
Mm-hmm.
Byron Katie has something she calls the work. And I find it really helpful for situations where we're really stuck in. There are real resentment about a person. We just cannot get over them, or a situation that, I can't believe this person is president. I can't believe whatever. Right? I can't believe no one cares about the state of X, Y, or Z. Right. So something that's really perturbing us. Recommendation: stop everything you're doing, go and do the work. The work is 4 questions, and it's at these moments where I want to have one of those guys who look things up and say, "Hey, can you
These
pull
are
this
the
up?"
4 questions.
So the first question she asks, and she has, I recommend going and watching Byron Katie the Work on YouTube, and watching conversations where that she has with people live. These she demonstrates them live. She'll take someone through her process, and it's all very simple. She wants simple questions, simple answers. Don't give me stories. Simple questions, simple answers. She'll say something like, I'm thinking of one person, one example. I distilled into, I am so mad at this person because they've destroyed my financial situation. Right? I'm so angry with X because they destroyed my financial situation. Sum it up. And then she'll say, question, is it true? So most people say, yes, it's true. Second question, are you absolutely sure that it's true?
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely sure that it's true? And we'll see if I can remember all four. And then forces you to ask that question again. Like,
Right.
is it true? Are they the one that destroyed the financial situation? Is my financial situation destroyed? Right? You start picking apart. Are you really so angry at them?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I think it's who are you without that thought? Okay. But at some point, who are you without that thought?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as you sit here today without the thought that I am so angry at Max for destroying my financial situation, who are you? And then, oh, I'm in a state of peace or whatever else. So she allows someone to access that. But then she does something very interesting where she says that statement that feels so real, and it has to feel real because it's getting us really worked up.
Right.
Right? You think about the thing that made you the most upset in your life ever. That's when I was introduced to her work. I was introduced when I was dealing with one of these things in my life that I didn't imagine I can ever see it any other way. I was so furious and hurt with another person, and I couldn't shake it. I was obsessed.
Mm.
It was all I thought about it. I was consumed by this. And this coach I was working with at the time was like, Ellie, we're going to do a breathwork session followed by the work. Took me through like a 45-minute hour breathwork session and gave me this piece of paper, fill it out. We're going to talk about it. And one of the parts of the work towards the end, she says, say the reverse of that statement.
Mm.
So there are many ways to make something the opposite, like I alluded to earlier. So we say, I am so angry at Max for destroying my financial situation. That's my statement.
Right.
And we say the opposite of that.
Right. What would the reverse be?
Max is so angry at me for destroying my financial situation. I am so angry at Max for improving my financial situation.
Mm.
I am so thrilled with Max for destroying my financial situation. Right? And the idea is, right, to take ourselves out of this very, very, very rigid way that we're looking at something and start looking at it like with the opposite lens. Just dance with this for a little bit. You're so stuck on this perspective. So throw every possible opposite at it and then ask yourself, how is that true?
Mm.
It feels so not true. I'm so happy with Max for destroying my financial situation.
Right.
And I remember I had a friend who lost, like, I'll give you two examples of this, where people were very stuck, very, very stuck, and not able to hear any of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like months or years later, then being able to hear something that's the opposite. So I know a guy who was, in business, doing really well, invested heavily with one individual. The investment went to hell. He felt he was, that guy didn't do right by him, failed promises and everything else. And now he was spinning out of control.
Mm.
And, when he and I, there was a point where he and I were talking about this, where he was like at the end of his rope, like really there. It's just like, my life can never get better. All my hard work is ruined, like everything.
Right.
Years of things delivered, destroyed by this guy. And he said something to the effect of, right, this guy is the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I was reminded of Byron Katie's work. And without taking him through the whole process, I said, maybe he's the best thing that ever happened to you.
Mm.
And what do you mean? I got anger. What do you mean?
How you respond to that?
I just asked what I mean, right? What would have to happen for that statement to be true?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. He'd have to be the best thing that ever happened to him.
There were a number of things, but in his case, for example, like one of the things he noticed, he wasn't on a good path. In other years of his life, he was focused 100% on finances.
Right.
He was ignoring his kids.
Hmm.
He had gotten to a state where he thought the only thing his kids needed from him was money. And you see this a lot with people who grow up in poverty, where they think the only thing my children need from me is money, because they feel like that was missing in their life. So they say, what does my child have to complain about? He has brand new clothes, it's a brand new car, he has
Nice house.
private school. Like, the kid didn't ask for any of this. He just asked for a present dad, right?
Right.
Right. And that's what he needs. And these other things, yeah, they're nice, but they're not nearly as essential as the presence of a dad. Just go look at someone who has everything and didn't have that relationship with their dad. The amount of wealthy kids who are addicted to drugs.
Right.
So, in asking that question to him, it provoked the thought of, maybe it's the best thing that happened to me because it gave me a perspective on family and children that I didn't have previously. Maybe I needed to see that I'm still a valuable father, even though I'm in a state right now where I don't feel like I can provide for them financially in the way they wanted. And suddenly, this guy is the best thing that happened to him. But these are not, it doesn't become a new truth. It becomes a perspective, a hat that I'm willing to wear for a few minutes. That guy still needs to be paid back and maybe needs to be fought and everything else, depending on the scenario. I'm just saying that we're walking through life with such fixed perspectives.
Right.
And they're making us very agitated. And oftentimes we're in denial about some truth. And the reason I brought this back is because of how, the reason I connected all this, and I'm going to give that second example that I mentioned, but I want to hear your thoughts on some of this, is just how often we are so resistant to the truth about something. We do not want to hear another way, and we stay stuck in that, fixed in that perspective. And there's so much that it takes for us to be shaken out of our perspective.
Yeah, when I hear that, I think about if you're willing to even consider another truth, another perspective, then that means you also got to take accountability. You got to be responsible for things possibly being different. And I feel like maybe some of us, we don't even want to go there. Like, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm the cause? What if I can fix it? Right? Forget what's happened to me. What if I'm the solution? Then the excuse evaporates. And that can get heavy sometimes, I think.
Could get heavy.
So, denial is sort of like a good barrier to, just kind of being real about this situation in like a more total, comprehensive kind of way. Like, what if Max isn't the worst thing that happened to me?
Right.
Now I may have some other holes in my boat that I need to fix.
What if he's the best thing that happened to me?
What if he's the best thing? Right. No way, he's bad. I
Exactly.
only want him
We're
to
stuck.
be
I
bad.
only
Right.
want him
We're
to be
stuck.
bad.
Right.
I remember I was really angry at someone because I felt like they made a commitment to me that they didn't keep. And my story was that because of that commitment they didn't keep, there was all this damage that was created in my personal life.
Mm.
And when I did this process with it, so I said, I'm upset at, we'll use the name Max again. I'm upset at Max for destroying my personal life.
Mm.
And then how did Max destroy my personal life? By making a commitment to me that he didn't keep. Okay, how long did that destruction take place? In my case, the destruction that happened over a 2-year period.
Mm.
How long did I know that Max didn't keep his commitment, or I thought that he didn't keep his commitment?
Right.
For 2 years. So literally on day 1 of 730 days,
Right.
2 years, on day 1,
You knew.
I knew.
And you sat there with it and didn't
And I
do
sat
anything.
there with it and didn't do anything.
So it's
in
not
my story. I'm saying in my own
Right,
story.
right.
I'm not saying that's
Yeah, for sure.
in my own story. Day 1. So who destroyed my personal life? Me or
Right.
them? They
Right.
informed me on day 1 that commitment that I thought I had from them, I did not have. For 2 years, I held on to the belief that maybe I can get it. And during this 2-year period, all of this destruction in my personal life happened. So if I'm
Right.
being honest about the situation, they're responsible for one day because I had no way of knowing about the one day until that day passed and the commitment didn't happen. The commitment that I thought I had from them wasn't met.
Mm.
I didn't know. So they're fully responsible for all the damage that happened in day 1.
Right.
And I'm fully responsible for all the damage that happened in day 2
Man,
730.
you're preaching to the choir right now. Recently, I had a situation where I went against one of sort of like my core laws, my core values, my core way of operating Ryan.
Let me guess.
Yep.
You worked with a desperate person.
Yep.
You know it.
Yep.
I can tell you without even you worked with a
Yep.
desperate person.
And it's kicking my ass.
For sure.
But inside of that, it's good because it's like you set the rules and here you are breaking it, or there's good reason why you said it and you're breaking it. Okay, let me remind you, like remind
Right.
yourself, like this is not, you did this for a reason. You go against it, it's your fault.
Right. The question is, instead of making it, because that fault sounds like a little
Mhm.
heavy, right? Did you know
Mm-hmm.
not to work with desperate people before doing this deal with him?
Yes.
But then why did you do the deal with him? Because you didn't know it.
Mm.
Now you know it.
No, I know.
Now you know it.
Tried and proven. Yeah.
What? Now you know it.
And you know what's funny?
You thought you knew it.
I thought I knew it.
You thought you knew it. But to know it means there's going to be temptations.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be temptations and still not go after it.
Right.
There's going to be fears and still not go after it. But you didn't know it. You thought you knew it.
Right.
So what a brilliant teacher this guy was.
For sure.
He taught you something that not only didn't you know, you so didn't know this that you thought you knew it. You were walking around telling other people, don't work with this people. You thought you knew it.
All right.
So
Right.
the whole world couldn't teach it to you. This guy, teacher of all teachers.
For sure. For sure. And I'm living that. Like I'm like, all right, now you know. Okay, you thought you knew, but now you know. That's exactly where I'm at. And the tide's shifting because I've kind of like relinquished like the feeling and the emotion towards this guy and this thing. And now it's like, without me saying anything, he's like busting his butt trying to make it right.
Right. Can we take a step deeper?
Mhm.
So you thought you knew not to work with desperate people,
Mm-hmm.
but you got tripped up here. What confused you about the situation? What was different?
What was different? It
Was it something he had, or was it the timing of it, the situation you were
definitely
in?
timing.
Timing. So what was going on in that time? We can edit this out if you're not
Yeah,
comfortable, so we
no.
can speak
At that
freely.
time, I was on a roll, and I already had it in my mind that I need to start investing to go from A to B, and it came along, and I got caught up in things are happening in my favor. Look at this, the universe is pulling in my favor, drops this on my lap, and then it was like, so the way I make also investment decisions kind of is how many waves is it going to create in my family? Like how much stuff is it going to shake up, right? So meaning, if I can make this investment and take a complete loss, what's the effect going to be on my immediate life and family? And I measure it, right? So at that point, I sit in my head, I'm like, all right, at this point right now, if I do this and it goes to hell, I'll be okay. But what ended up happening is I got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper
Right.
into that, which I didn't consider.
Right. But that's also, we spoke about this in previous episodes. That's not having a hell no. So you went to a yes.
Right.
When we're doing investments, like I'm investing my time, my energy, my resources, hard earned into something.
Right.
It's got to be a hell yes. Even if it doesn't work, did it
Right.
come
It
from
got
a
to
hell
be
yes?
a hell yes. Yeah, for sure.
Come from a hell yes. And this didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm,
And it made me think about so many things too, like something else another like exit blinking flashing light that I saw that I just completely went around was this book that I read talks about how the poorest man in the village became the richest man by following these rules to gold. And one of the things it says, and I'm butchering this, but essentially, don't go to a butcher to ask him to build a house for you.
right.
It just can't happen. So this guy was in an industry that he was fairly new to, but he was like resolute that he knew what he was doing, and I trusted that. When if I step back, it's like, you're a butcher. It's no
So
way
he
you
didn't
can
have the
build me
skill
a
set.
house.
He didn't have skill set, number one. Number two, he was a desperate person. And
Mhm.
you've already told yourself, don't work with desperate people.
Mm-hmm.
But because of
Timing.
timing, which it's interesting, when I asked the question, I thought you were going to answer something like business wasn't good. I was getting a little fearful.
Mhm.
So I went after an opportunity I shouldn't have. You said the opposite.
Right.
You said things were rolling
Mm-hmm.
You started getting this aura of invincibility, a little superstition around the way things work.
Mm-hmm.
Things are good. They're always going to be good. This is good luck. I'm in my
Right.
on my mode. I can handle more.
Right.
And what you violated a core value, a value of yours that you've said, right, is that.
Yeah, and I just even like another episode that we talked about, like I violated my own boundaries.
Right. You violated your own boundaries. It wasn't him. He tested it
Mm-hmm.
because he needs someone to work with, right? He
Right.
doesn't have a rule.
Right.
Just because I'm desperate, I don't work with anyone. You have that rule.
Right.
Right. You
Sure.
violated your own boundaries. But if I can add to it, you're not out of it.
Nope.
Right. You're still slipping. And you run the risk of getting caught more into this situation if you don't forgive yourself real quickly.
Right.
So a lot of love towards that guy. Thank you so much. Hard-earned education, teacher of all teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You already know you don't work with desperate people. That means even after you've thrown good money,
Right.
clean up and walk away. There's nothing to recover because what you got here was an education.
For sure.
And
On the ground.
right. So right now, if you don't go to that space, then what's going to happen is that you're going to look at the situation as a negative situation, one that you have to still recover the gold from.
Right.
But when you go to the space of, I got such a valuable lesson, you say, thank you so much. Some people spend 4 years and $200,000 for an education that they can't do anything with.
Right.
I spent much shorter amount of time while I was able to do other things and earn money,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully less than $200,000. Right. But if some educations are expensive,
Right.
we're looking for the best education money can buy.
Right. I'm definitely paying a premium for this education.
Okay, good. Good. You
Yeah.
walk around, right? Some people walk around with a Harvard degree, and it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
pretty impressive. I got a degree of, you know, right?
Right.
Degree from this guy. He's one of the greatest teachers. He taught you a lesson in a way that you didn't know previously.
Right.
But it's so important you thought you knew. And it's so scary when we think we know something.
Right.
That's where you really get caught.
Let me ask you something, and we might have to edit this out, but the business is
Say that again, the business.
so the business, the light staying on. The business is hinged on me. Like, I'm the most exposed, but it's also to keep things going. It's me. If I back out, everything collapses. So part of me wants to stay in it and see what goal I can recover, because it's still happening. But if I back out of it now, the exposure is still there. So I still have to clean the mess by myself. Versus staying in it and see.
Right, meaning there's no way to completely walk away from the situation. That means there's still more to learn.
Right. And there's a chance that things could turn around, and it can, because everything now that like everything's happened, the understanding is there. It's just starting at a deficit, literally and figuratively.
Right. So this is where we can trip ourselves up in business, right? They say when you're in business, like one of the things that's necessary to make decisions
Mm-hmm.
is to be able to compartmentalize emotion.
Mm.
So this situation is so wrapped up with emotion for you. Guilt, regret, fear, judgment, like all of these, the wanting it to succeed. And obviously there's a situation that has to be cleaned up. But because of that, you're kind of the worst person to analyze this emotionless. And this is when we bring other people who have less emotion into the situation, because we so want this to work. We don't want to walk back home to our wife and say,
Right.
like, I screwed up again.
Right.
I screwed again. But when we understand that the money's never been about the money,
Mm-hmm.
because what did you do with your money? You spent it.
Right.
And what are you going to do with this money? You're going to spend it.
Right.
Or you're going to save it, and then your kid's going to spend it.
Right.
You're going to save it. And even spend it. Some of our stuff, I mean, it came and it went. It came and it went. So what do we have left from it?
Mm.
A friend of mine said, I thought I had my money, but I was so afraid of losing it. But if it was mine, then why would I be afraid of losing it?
Right.
The fact that I can lose it means it was never really mine.
Right.
Are you worried about losing your experience, for example?
I think right now I'm at the point where the lesson has taught me, like, it's like I learned, like, okay, now I know how this works. But
Where do you think my conviction from this topic comes from?
Where?
Reading a book?
No, from experience.
Yeah, losing a ton of money on bad deals. Like, that's why I'm fired up.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, I learned this one.
Right.
This one. That's where experience comes from. You want to work with someone in business.
Mhm.
Or you're investing in someone. Give me someone who's had a failure. And then I know how they navigated that. Give me that guy.
Yeah.
Success is great at success. What do you do in failure?
Right.
So in these moments are where, if I had to give like advice on the subject, even though you didn't give me that much information, is because of the emotion attached to it,
Mhm.
is bring in someone else who can look at this, and your commitment is, I'm going to share everything. I'm not going to hold anything back that I'm kind of ashamed of.
Mhm.
So someone who's comfortable enough to say, like, this is freaking everything. This is really how much money I put in. This is really what's going on. This is really what the guy did. This is really what he said. These are really all the contracts and all the risks at play. And then from there, let them give you a perspective.
All right.
Because there's so much emotion tied up to this, tied up in this. That's where we risk throwing good money after bad. And it's right. It's similar to,
Am I in denial?
well, actually, I'm glad we're discussing this, because there's a resistance for sure.
Mm.
Right. You don't want it to be what it is. You're
Right.
not really willing to investigate it and say, like, hey, is this patient dead?
Right.
And then you bring it to the doctor and say, can we resuscitate
Right.
this? You don't want to hear that.
Right.
And we have to become more willing to hear that
Mm.
in order to make the right decision and not throw good money after bad. As an example, you said, when you went into the business,
Mhm.
you said, I'm going to put an amount of money that's not going to hurt me too bad if I
Right.
lose it.
Right.
That's where you started. Then you put in more money. My
Mhm.
guess is when you put in that additional money, you already knew you were throwing good money after bad. You already had that information.
Right.
But now you were emotional, you were caught up, and you wanted to save it.
Right.
So you're upset at him for all of the money you lost, but he didn't lose you all that money. He only lost you the first
Right.
investment,
Right.
which you said, I'm only going to do because it's not so much. But then that sucked you in further. All of that from your decisions. So let's imagine your first investment was 10 grand.
Mhm.
And then afterwards you put in 90 grand. So you're responsible for 90. He's responsible for 10 in that way. Not off the hook, but
Yeah.
we say, like, we own this. We want to project it. But the responsibility is not blame. It's not the same thing. Responsibility is empowerment.
Mhm.
If I am the problem, I am the solution. So if I made this mistake, but what I was saying before about money coming and going, I heard this from Aubrey Marcus. He said, there's two kinds of wealth: squirrel wealth and bear wealth. A squirrel, the wealth that it collects, what does it do with it? It hides it somewhere.
Mhm.
Money in the bank. I've stored it here. I've stored it there.
Right.
That can come, that can go. We all thought we had savings, and then inflation went, and whatever we thought we had that was so safe, we found out is 30, 40% less than it was. I don't know about these 7-8% numbers.
Right. Right.
No, I don't know what exactly they're
Right.
I don't know what exactly they're buying to get to these numbers. Right? Then it's staggering.
Mhm.
We've saved and we don't have that. What is that? That's squirrel wealth. Because a squirrel takes an acorn, hides it. Its wealth is in what it's putting away. It hides it. And now it can be lost.
Mhm.
He says, what we want, he's like, what I'm offering, it was like more of a sales video, but the point was good, was beer wealth. Is beer wealth. What is beer wealth? What does a beer do with everything it wants to accumulate? It eats it.
Right.
And it packs it in more and more. In other words, it becomes it. You got to kill the beer to take this from him.
Mm.
It goes to sleep. It's got all of that. There's no nest you can go to get it. You got to get him to get it.
Right.
So he said there's a certain kind of wealth that we become.
Mm.
And that's the wealth that we're after. So this money game is not really about money. It's never been about money. It's been about it's been about those things that we become in the process. Because the money we make, we're going to spend. And we make more, we're spending more. And we would have lived without it. We lived in a smaller house, a bigger house, right? All of those things. I'm not talking about extreme poverty. I'm talking about
Right.
beyond that.
Right.
A nicer car, a lesser car. That wasn't what it was about. It was like those 2 years that I drove a nicer car. That's not what this is about. What it's about is I got in the fire I learned certain experiences. I became that knowledge and information. And now I'm showing up with a certain amount of skills and resources and talents that I can bring to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
As a practical example of this, when you and I first met, you were willing to take a job at a number you would never take a job at today.
Correct.
Right. Why?
I know too
Not
much.
only because there's a confidence you have. There's in the process of the money coming and going, there was a beer wealth that you created.
Mm.
There wasn't just, hey, I don't remember the number, but let's say, let's say it was a customer service job at $10 an hour.
Mm.
And even if you said $10 for inflation, $20 an hour today, or
Right.
$25 an hour, you wouldn't take that number today because you don't even want to take a job working for someone else
Right.
today.
Right.
I'm not that anymore. You were that before. I am not that. How did that happen? That in the process of working, successes, failures, and everything else, you became something else. And we become so attached to the money that comes and goes and take our eye off the prize on what this is all about. It's all a personal development workshop. The money game is all it's a personal becoming workshop. We develop into something and someone that couldn't have happened without the financial stress.
Yeah. So money's a great teacher in that way.
Great teacher. So if it did its job, if you can internalize that, then you say, thank you. I could have spent the $100,000. I'm going to use that number. I could have spent the $100,000 on toys and games and vacations and a little bit of a nicer stuff for myself, my kid, not to take away from those things.
Right.
A lot of that would have been stuff that comes and goes. A beautiful vacation with your family, obviously, is forever. But a lot of that is stuff that comes and goes.
Mm-hmm.
But what doesn't come and go is the experience you got from it. So if you're able to actually learn the lessons, it's $100,000 extremely well spent. If not, then no problem. You need to learn the lesson more. Like if after this conversation, you go and drop another just as much into this business and you sink more, then, and it doesn't work, then great. You needed a better education. 4 years of college weren't enough for you.
All right.
And now you know the lesson. And then you become that. Because if you knew it, you wouldn't do it. So the fact that you do it means you didn't know it. So now you're getting that information. It's a worthwhile education. And you move forward. But this has always been an education. It's never been about making money.
To grow and develop.
You're just getting paid. That's it. When you go to school, you pay for your education.
Yeah.
When you're in the business world, you have the opportunity to get paid for your education. But oftentimes we have to pay for education, even in the business world.
There it is. So we'll talk off camera.
Let's talk off camera. Should I share the second example or let it go?
Yeah, please. Please, go for it.
I'm going to let it go. We've exhausted this topic.
You sure?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
We could cut it.
We'll let this go.
All right, there it is.